Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, is warning the Democrats that they're going to be in for a 100-car pileup if they abolish the filibuster. And this is something the Democrats are sort of desperately, or many of them desperately eager to do. Why? Because even though their majorities in the House and Senate are very narrow, just a few seats in the House, actually no seats in the Senate, they'd have to haul in Kamala Harris to break the 50-50 tie. And the Republicans are holding very united on most of the key issues. So the Democrats need to steamroll them, and the filibuster, which is essentially an ability to block the Senate unless it can get 60 votes to override the filibuster. This has been a technique for the party in the minority to be able to slow things down, not always stop them, stop the really bad stuff or the really big stuff that the Democrats want to do, like change the way that voting rules are conducted throughout the country, for example, radical overhauls of this or that. Those can be blocked with the filibuster. Now, this is why the Democrats are really eager to set aside the filibuster so they don't have this nuisance of this traditional practice in the Senate. Now, the filibuster, by the way, is not in the Constitution. It wasn't devised by the founders, but it's a very old practice. In fact, it goes back to 1806. And there were multiple efforts in the 19th century to get rid of it, but it is basically held firm. And both parties have by and large seen the value of it, in part because both parties realize that at some point you end up in the minority. American politics has been kind of a pendulum swing, and it certainly has been very closely divided since at least 1980. So no party has had a secure hold on power. But I think the Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster because they have legislation, including H.R. 1, that they think will give them a secure hold on power for the future. Now, of course, on this issue, and Mitch McConnell pointed this out in his speech, here's a tiny clip of that speech, and then I want to talk a little bit more about what was in it. Listen.
There's an ironic element to this whole conversation. Some Democratic senators seem to imagine this would be a tidy trade-off. If they could just break the rules on a razor-thin majority, sure, it might damage the institution, but then nothing would stand between them and their entire agenda, a new era of fast-track policymaking.
Now, today, it's Democrats like Dick Durbin who talk about getting rid of the filibuster. Yet, in April of 2017, this is really just 3 months after Trump took office. It's very interesting. A majority of Democrats and Republicans sent a letter supporting the filibuster. And signing the letter, 33 Democrats signed it. Lots of familiar names, by the way. Senator Chris Coons, Joe Manchin, Amy Klobuchar, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Mazie Hirono, Kamala Harris, Sheldon Whitehouse. So these are the Democrats who saw the value of having a filibuster when Republicans controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency. But what's interesting here is it wasn't just the Republicans who signed the letter. It wasn't just the Democrats. A majority of Republicans did too. So in a way, this is not just a case of, yeah, the Democrats wanted the filibuster then, and they want to get rid of it now that they have the power, and Republicans are just as hypocritical. Hey, look, the Republicans will try to get rid of it. No, the Republicans supported the filibuster on principle, even when it would seem to benefit the Democrats. And the Democrats, of course, used the filibuster to defeat proposals that otherwise would have gone through if it was merely a 50-50 vote. Today, though, the Democrats seem to be quite willing to set aside principle. The only question is, will all the Democrats get on board? It's not clear that Kristen Sinema of Arizona is on board. She said she supports the filibuster. So did Joe Manchin. But Joe Manchin is this mercurial character. And in West Virginia, he always goes, oh, I'm a voice of moderation. I want everything to go through on a bipartisan basis. But he shows a little bit of a different face in Washington, D.C. So the question is, will Joe Manchin come through for the Democrats? or will he actually hold firm with what he's been telling the people of West Virginia all along? We're going to see, by and large, what kind of a snake Joe Manchin is, if indeed he is a snake. This is going to be a key test for his own voters. Because, see, these are conservative West Virginia voters, and they go, oh, Joe Manchin's a really nice guy. We can trust him, even though he's a Democrat. So in Trump country, this Democrat has been elected to represent the conservative values of West Virginia. And we're about to find out how serious he is about these things he's been saying. Now, Mitch McConnell is also willing to play realpolitik, which is to say, Mitch McConnell is willing to say, hey guys, listen, there's a lot of stuff in the Senate that just depends upon the collegiality of the Senate. It's kind of like in a household. It doesn't actually matter if, the man or the woman is sort of in charge, let's say brings in the bacon, feels that they run the household. The truth of the matter is, if the other person is miserable, if you're constantly running roughshod over them, they have ways to retaliate and make your life extremely miserable. And that's what Debbie's chuckling here in the background. She's like, I have to occasionally put this to use in the D'Souza household. Make sure to take that smile off Dinesh's face if he's trying to boss me around. So anyway, I rarely try to boss you around, if ever. In fact, I think you would admit the opposite is more often the case. So you're again laughing with that recognition. Oh, oops, yes, I guess that's true. So anyway, with Mitch McConnell, what he's saying is that I've got ways to gum up the Senate. Even ordinary business, not even controversial stuff, not H.R. 1. Where, McConnell talks about farm bills, highway bills, defense appropriation, defense authorization bills. These are bills that normally have large majorities of both parties. But if you want to start messing things up, you want to take away the filibuster, you want to basically turn the Senate from a deliberative, more consensus-oriented body into a free fight, then McConnell is, I'm going to be sort of like the angry wife who decides, I may not go Lorena Bobbitt on my husband, but I know lots of ways to make his day miserable. I think this is something that McConnell is actually really good at. He's not exactly the best speech maker. He gets into fights with Trump. But I think the good thing about him in this case is that deep down, he's kind of mean-spirited. He's kind of vindictive, just sort of like the angry wife. And there's a way that McConnell is going to teach these people a lesson. So the Democrats are going to have to, I think twice, maybe even 3 times. And I think Sinema and Manchin are going to want to ask, do we want to break the collegiality of the Senate and go into this free-for-all? When if the Republicans take the House in the midterms and the Senate, whatever we do to them now, they'll pretty soon be doing to us.